Alhamdulillah, we find ourselves just a few weeks away from the blessed month of Ramadan. And with blessings come responsibility. And from the responsibilities that we have towards the month of Ramadan is that we are aware and educated and have the basic knowledge that we need as Muslims in order to make the best of Ramadan, starting with the fast. Now, the fast of the Muslim is a pillar of our deen. There's knowledge that we refer to as fard ayn, knowledge that is incumbent, compulsory, obligatory upon every person. Once you reach the age of maturity, it then becomes your responsibility to know. Not anybody else's, not your mom, not your father, not the Sheikh. It's your responsibility to know. And then you have knowledge that is fard kifaya, which is more of a communal obligation. Knowledge that is mandatory upon members of a community. Now, when it comes to the knowledge that we will be studying this evening, and sharing this evening, it falls under the category of fard ayn, which means that we have to uphold this responsibility. It's our duty. We have a very famous saying in our tradition: knowledge is the prerequisite of statement and action. Knowledge is the prerequisite of statement and action. Therefore, if we wish to make these statements and these actions during the month of Ramadan, then we must first meet it with what? Knowledge. This class that I teach, it usually takes about 4 weeks to cover in totality. But unfortunately, we only have 1 week. And I will do my best, inshallah ta'ala, to cover what needs to be covered. And if we have time, inshallah, I will certainly leave the floor open for questions. So without further ado, let us begin, inshallah ta'ala, with our study of the fiqh of fasting. Before we study anything, it is important that we are able to define what we are studying. And when it comes to definition, there are two definitions that we must understand: the linguistic definition and the technical definition. So when it comes to the linguistic definition of siyam, we understand it to be al-imsaku an al-shay, to refrain from something. Al-imsak is to refrain. An al-shay, it could be anything. To refrain or to withhold oneself from something. The Arabs would say, Sama Sam an al-kanam. He fasted, as we would translate it, but he restricted himself from speech. Now, if we are to look at the technical definition of the word or the term siyam, we understand it to be, and I want you to memorize this, we have to memorize this because within it is the fiqh in of itself. Within the definition is the fiqh. It is the worship of Allah with the intention of refraining from food, drink, and major intimacy from the adhan of Fajr to the adhan of Maghrib. Who can repeat that for me, please? I just said it. Who is able to repeat it to me? Who's listening? See, I said it. Before I said it, I said you need to memorize it. I'll say it again. I'll say it again. Fasting is the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the intention of refraining from food, drink, and major intimacy from the adhan of Fajr to the adhan of Maghrib. Who can give that to me? Hassan, go ahead. Okay, remember that. In the definition is the fiqh. In the definition is the fiqh. It is the vehicle. It is the vehicle. So now we understand the term. Al-imsaku an al-shay, to refrain from something linguistically, Technically, the worship of Allah with the intention of refraining from food, drink, major intimacy from the adhan of Fajr to the adhan of Maghrib. Now we're getting there, mashallah. Let's continue. Mandatory. This is the hukum. Fasting. And more specifically, the fast of what? Ramadan. When we look at the 5 pillars of Islam, Buniya al-Islamu ala khams, we understand Islam is established on 5 pillars of action. Right? From these pillars was siyam and fasting. But the fasting here is the fasting of Ramadan. Not the fasting of Monday and Thursday, not the fasting of Ashura, not the fasting of Yom Arafah. It is the fasting of Ramadan. So the ruling is that any person who is Muslim, who is mature, meaning baligh, okay, who is aqil, meaning they're sane, they can formulate an intention, and this is specifically for the sisters, tahira, and she is pure from any major ritual impurity, then it becomes mandatory on that person to fast. Who can give me the 4 criteria? Oh, hey, buddy, I remember you. I gave a lecture a few weeks ago at a Muslim New Revert conference, and I was giving the people the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, ثَلَاثٌ مَنْ كُنَّ فِيهِ وَجَدَ بِهِنَّ حَلَاوَةَ الْإِيمَانِ. 3 things that if a person holds on to, they will taste the sweetness of faith. And then I asked the congregation, I think there was hundreds of people there, and I said, what are they? Not one person raised their hand except for this young man right here. You think I forgot? No, I don't forget. Okay, go ahead, give me.
So the first one was a person who was Muslim, who was mature, who was pure.
Pure, yes. Ritually pure, yes. And sane, we'll say. Sane. Why sane? Why sane? Go. So they know why and what they're doing, and so that they can formulate what? Intention. Right? إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Now let's go to Quran. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. What surah is this? Oh, you knew. I just said, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. كتب عليك. كتب بمعنى فرض. فرض بمعنى وجب. It's واجب. عليكم الصيام. صيام شهر رمضان كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. This is the ruling. It's the ruling. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. What surah? بقرة. هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان فمن شهد منكم الشهر فليصم. That's the shahid there. That's the evidence there. فمن شهد, whoever witnesses, meaning whoever's alive and they enter into that specific month, فليصم. He has to what? Fast. If you meet those 4 what? Criteria. Okay? From the Sunnah we know بني الإسلام على خمس, right? And by consensus of the scholars, there's no group of scholars, there's no school of thought within our deen, within mainstream Islam that will say that fasting is not obligatory. It is obligatory. It is clearly mentioned in the Quran, it is clearly highlighted in the Sunnah, and therefore the rulings are clear and very evident. Let's move on now to the pillars of fasting. So just as specific acts of worship have pillars, like salah, right? Does salah have pillars? Salah has pillars. Similarly, fasting has pillars. What is a pillar? Who can tell me what a pillar is? What is a pillar? If I say, this is a pillar of fasting, what am I actually saying? Go ahead. Good. So in his situation, he mentions the prayer. Something that if omitted from that act of worship is then rendered what? Invalid. That is what a pillar is, a rukn. Sometimes you have arkan, sometimes you have wajibat, sometimes you have sunan, right? These are the things that you would have generally in an act of worship. Okay? So here we're talking about what? Arkan, the pillars. Without it, what? It's not there. The first pillar we'll talk about is intention, because we go back to the definition. The worship of Allah with the what? Intention. Intention. So number one, the evidence to that, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَّا نَوَى. Verily deeds are by intentions, and everybody will be rewarded according to their intention. So we understand that. Every act of worship must be met firstly with an action of the heart, which is the intention. Now, how do we make the intention for fasting? Sometimes you'll get the calendar, right? You'll get a calendar. The calendar will be presented to you, and on the bottom of the calendar, it'll say, Dua lis-siyam. Right? Or Dua li niyyat al-siyam. Right? There is no dua for niyyat al-siyam. That is not how we formulate intentions. The only time we will verbalize an intention is when we do Hajj or we do Umrah. Right? The intention of these actions are established in the heart of the believer. So we understand that an intention has to be made. And the scholars, they say that an intention has to be made every day of Ramadan. Every day of Ramadan. How? Two ways. Two ways. The first way is to make a generic intention. Is to make a generic intention. Meaning, the night of Ramadan comes, because the night comes before what? The day. That's why we pray Taraweeh one day without what? Fasting in the day, right? We pray Taraweeh one evening without fasting in the day. So let's say, let's just say we're expecting possibly March 1st, first day. So we'll say February 29th, 28th, not a leap year, 28th. February 28th. You come to the masjid. You pray Taraweeh. You go home, and before you go to sleep or before Fajr, because the statement of Hafsa radiallahu anh from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, مَنْ لَمْ يُبَيِّتُ الصِّيَامِ قَبْلَ الْفَجْرِ فَلَا صِيَامَ لَهُ. The person who does not establish their siyam before the prayer of Fajr, then there is no fasting for that person. This is the evidence of fasting, by the way. مَنْ لَمْ يُبَيِّتُ الصِّيَامِ قَبْلَ الْفَجْرِ فَلَا صِيَامَ لَهُ. Whoever does not establish the intention for fasting before the Fajr of that day, then there's no fasting for that person. So before that Fajr, you make a generic intention. And that generic intention is, in your heart, inshallah, I'm going to fast for the entirety of the month of Ramadan. And the scholars will accept that form of intention. However, for example, let's say you travel, or let's say you become ill, or let's say you have the menstruation, and then you are unable to fast the entirety, so you break your fast, right? And then you'll say maybe you're traveling 4 days, 3 days, maybe you're sick 2 days, maybe your menstruation 6 to 7 days. Now you want to start again. Now you want to start your fast again the next day, you have to rejuvenate that intention again. Is that understood? That intention has to be made again. Because the initial intention was for what? The entirety of the month. However, you did not fulfill the entirety of the month, and therefore the intention must be established once again. That is if you make a generic intention. Now, the second way that you can formulate your intention is by making it every night. Making it every night. You make the intention every night. Do you know how you make an intention every night? Go ahead. Good. So take your phone. Fajr comes in 6 o'clock. You're lying in your bed. You putting into your phone 5 a.m. You've established your intention. And then you wake up and say, oh my God, I didn't make my intention. What are you talking about? You set your phone for what? 5 a.m. Why? Because you want to take suhoor. Why do you want to take suhoor? Because you're going to fast. Don't let shaitan play with you halfway during the day, during dhuhr. You're in your salah, you're like, oh my God, I'm not fasting. What are you talking about? You ate suhoor, you ate so much. You're good. Don't let shaitan play with your intention. This is how he wants to get you during this time. So you do it every day. And we do it every day for the most part. But there's no harm in doing it both ways. Beginning of the day, you say, Ya Allah, my intention is to fast every single day. Guess what happens if you pass away during the month of Ramadan? It's blessed, but you also will be what? Rewarded. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. So do we understand how to formulate or establish the first intention? Go ahead, quickly. No, we already said that. Intentions are not what? Verbalized. Intentions are not verbalized. You know, sometimes the brother comes into the masjid, نَوَيْتُ أَنْ أُصَلِّي رَكْعَتَيْ لِلَّهِ فِي مَسْجِدْ دَارِ الْهِجْرَةِ في Calgary, Alberta, Canada, مُوَجِّهْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَةِ. Like, no, like, what are you talking about, bro? Like, you just do it. Just do it. Right? Intentions are not verbalized like that. Unless you're in your ihram, لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك لبيك اللهم عمرة لبيك اللهم حج. طيب, let's move on inshallah. Pillar number 2, time. Time. Just as salah has fixed times, إن الصلاة كانت على المؤمنين كتابا موقوتا. Also, fasting has its pillars when it comes to time. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا. Actually, before we get into the fasting itself, the month of Ramadan is the month in which you fulfill the fast of Ramadan. Right? We understand that. And that month is how many days? Who knows? 30 days? I usually start 29 days, making it easier. And then 30 if, yeah, alhamdulillah. Cherry on top, usually we say, right? 29 to 30 days. Can it ever be 31 days? No. In some situations it could be if there was a miscalculation in the what? In the sighting. But we're not getting into the sighting of the moon in this lecture, that is for sure. But the Prophet ﷺ said, Ashahru hakada. Oh, hakada. What is he saying? If you don't hear me, see me. This is actually a teaching methodology. When you study teaching methodology, you will learn that sometimes there are auditory learners and sometimes there are what? Visual learners. Prophet ﷺ understood who he was dealing with, and he was an educator of all educators. So, to all the visual learnings, الشهر هكذا. أو, that's it. Nothing more, nothing less. 29 or 30 days. Okay? The fasting in of itself, the actual time frame of the fasting is mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمُ الْخَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ مِنَ الْفَجْرِ ثُمَّ أَتِمُّوا الصِّيَامَ إِلَى اللَّيْلِ. وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا. Eat and drink. حَتَّى, until what? يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمُ الْخَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ مِنَ الْفَجْرِ. When the horizon, when you can see that white line in the horizon, that's al-Fajr al-Sadiq. Fajr al-Kadib is going to be vertical. Fajr al-Sadiq is going to be what? Horizontal. Right? So we understand that as Muslims, going back to what? The definition, to refrain from food, drink, and major intimacy from what? The adhan of Fajr to the adhan of? Why do we say the adhan? We say the adhan, and I want to mention this here, and this is something that we're always asked about this time of year. We get emails and messages and phone calls and so on, is what is imsak? You guys know when you get the calendar, and then on the calendar it's like one row, Fajr, one row, Shuruq, one row, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, but you have one before all of that, it says imsak. What is imsak? Imsak is to refrain. Didn't we already define that? Al-siyam, al-imsaku an al-shay. So to refrain from eating. So let's say imsak says 6 a.m. But Fajr comes in at 6:10 or 6:15. Sometimes we leave you 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Let's say you wake up at 6:05. Can you roll over to the side of your bed, grab your water and drink? During the imsak time? Yes, of course. Of course you're allowed. The imsak there is not something that is actually found often in our books of fiqh. But it is something that has recently come and has been presented to us by way of these calendars that we see as a precautionary what? Means. It's just a precautionary means. Okay? But the issue here is, like the Prophet ﷺ said, eat and drink throughout the night, even if you hear the adhan of who? Bilal. But stop eating and drinking once you hear the adhan of who? No. Does anybody know? Hi, you popped your head out again. I was waiting for you to pop your head out, mashallah. Welcome. Ahsanti. Abdullah bin Maktoum. The blind man. He was the one who gave the adhan for what? For Fajr. But Bilal, he would give the adhan. Even now when you go to Medina, there is adhan that is made 1 hour before what? The adhan of Fajr. Okay? So here we understand from the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, it's from adhan to adhan. Quick question. What if the muadhin is making the adhan for Maghrib? Do you have to wait until he's done making the adhan? No. The moment he goes, Khalas, somebody's already done his day. Right? So he just swallowed, he didn't even chew it, mashallah. He's like, right? The more he says, Allah, khalas, eat. And if you're eating, and the adhan for Fajr comes in, you have food in your mouth or food in your hand, then quickly finish it. Right? Finish it quickly. If it's in your mouth, chew it, drink it, swallow it, you're good. Khalas. The deen is very easy. Oh, I don't know. I had something stuck in my teeth and then it came in and I think I broke my fast. Fasting is so hard. That's shaitan. He wants to make things what? Difficult. He wants to make things difficult. يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. And this is actually referring to what? Fasting. This is actually referring, this is within the passages of fasting. Let's continue, inshallah ta'ala. There's a lot that we need to cover, and I haven't even, started here. So, those who are exempted from fasting. Those who are exempted from fasting. Who are exempt from fasting? But it's like, I'm a construction worker, I'm exempted, the Sheikh told me. Yeah, well, I didn't read that. I didn't know where you got that one from, bro. Right? Right? It's okay. I have the doctor's letter. So you don't present it to your boss, you got to present it to Al-Hayyul Qayyum. But may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala strengthen our brothers and sisters who are working these difficult jobs. It's not easy, but it's certainly not an excuse. It's certainly not an excuse. Especially now, with the days getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. طيب. Let's move in. Allah understands that people are different. And they have different circumstances and different situations going on in their lives. And Allah considers all of these things when it comes to fulfilling His rights. Okay? So let's talk about who are the people who are exempted. What does exempted mean? Excused. Very good. From fasting. So let's start off with individuals who are afflicted with sickness. And sickness is broken into two types of sickness. We have short-term and we have chronic. Okay? Short-term and chronic. What is a short-term? Give me an example quickly. Flu. Headache. No. I got a headache. No. Everybody gets headaches fasting. No, not a headache. Huh? Sure. Okay. Sure. We can say that. All right. We can say that. Like flu, a fever, severe cough. These types of illnesses that we can kind of get over in 2-3 days. That's a temporary illness, right? May Allah keep us all healthy and safe. Ameen. And then we have a permanent, or not permanent, we'll say chronic illness. And that's something like, somebody maybe they're suffering from diabetes, or they're possibly suffering from like some type of heart condition, or some type of illness that requires them to take constant medication throughout the day in order to remain healthy and upright. Let's talk about temporary illness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, أيام معدودات فمن كان منكم مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر وعلى الذين يطيقونه فدية طعام مسكين. Okay, so this is the verse 184 in Surah Al-Baqarah. This is the shahid here. Let's just talk about what we need to talk about today. فمن كان منكم مريضا أو على سفر في شهر رمضان. If you are ill or you are what? Traveling, then your fidya or your makeup is ayyamun ukhar, after Ramadan. Let's get into it. What is the measuring stick? How do you guys, have you ever had this where you wake up and you're like, I don't know if I can fast today? Right? Like, I don't know if I can fast today. What's the measuring stick or what's the criteria that you are going to implement in order to make that decision? I am too sick or I am able. Two things you want to keep in mind. Number one, that if you are to fast, it is going to increase the illness. If by fasting and refraining from hydration and nutrition is going to cause the illness that you have to become more severe, that is something you have to keep into consideration when it comes to your decision. Number two is if it is going to prolong the illness. If your illness is going to be prolonged. So sometimes people, this is what they end up doing. They say, I'm not going to break my fast. And they should break their fast, but they're like, I'm not going to break my fast. And they don't break their fast, and they become more sick. And instead of refraining from fasting for one day, they got so sick, now they have to stop fasting for like 3, 4, 5 days. Right? So you have to understand, is this going to cause the illness to become worse? Is it going to be more severe? And is it going to affect my recovery time? If you feel it's going to affect these two things, then that should be a sign that you what? Break your fast. And always there needs to be an element of what? Sincerity. There needs to be an element of sincerity. If you're sincere, then don't worry about it. Allah is going to judge your heart first and foremost. If you truly believed it with your heart, and you're truly wanting to fast, but because of the situation that Allah has placed in front of you, you have made this decision, put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seek your recovery and your strength from Allah, and you will be back at it bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. What is the ruling? فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ. So we say قضاء بدون فدية. Right? It's just making it up. Before when? Before the next Ramadan. What happens if I'm in a situation where I have days that I did not make up before the next Ramadan and Ramadan entered? Your Ramadan doesn't count? Man, you'd be, alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. You're tough, bro. That's a little, your Ramadan doesn't count. So, good. There's three things that you need to do. Okay? There's two things that you need to do. One thing that is recommended that you do. Number one, so let's say Ramadan came, you didn't make up your days. For whatever reason. 360 days weren't, or 330 days wasn't enough, but, sometimes things happen, Number one, you fast Ramadan. Right? Your Ramadan is accepted. You fast Ramadan. But you need to make istighfar. That's something you have to make because you've committed a major what? A major sin. Right? You committed a major sin. Number two, you need to make what? The day up as soon as possible. Once Ramadan is over. And number three, what is highly recommended is that you pay what? Fidya. It is not mandatory, but many of the scholars, they what? They recommend it. That you pay fidya. So those three things, that's what I would advise anyone who enters into the month of Ramadan they had not yet finished their fasting days, certainly make istighfar. May Allah forgive us for our shortcomings. Make the intention to make it up immediately after Ramadan. And furthermore, if you can pay fidya, that's what you should do. Fidya is to pay, is to offer a meal to a less fortunate Muslim, right? A Muslim who is a miskeen or a faqir, that is for you to offer them a food or a plate of food or a weight in food that is similar to the type of food that you yourself would what? Consume. Right? لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. I'll get to you inshallah. But what about if it's a permanent chronic illness? So let's say I suffer from a condition that requires me to take constant medication. What is then what is the ruling on that specific individual? وَعَلَى الَّذِينَ يُطِيقُونَهُ فِدْيَةٌ طَعَامُ مِسْكِينٍ. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he mentions concerning this portion of the verse, he says, this is for the individuals who have chronic what? Illness. And they're not able to fast. There's no makeup. Is there a makeup? Why? Why can't they just make it up? Because in the first place they couldn't even do it. Right? In the first place they couldn't even do it, so there's no need for them to make it up. For them is to what? Okay, but let's say halfway through the year, they got better and they didn't pay their fidya yet. And the fidya can be paid before, during, or after. Or it can be paid like every single day. And many of the scholars, they say it's better to pay it after the fidya is required. Because if you pay it all in the beginning of the month, what happens? You don't owe anything in the beginning of the month. You understand what I'm saying? You don't owe anything in the beginning of the month. So you want to do it daily? You could do it daily. Some of these websites, even the IISC, they have like a daily withdrawal. So you put like $15, sometimes it's like $10 to $15, right? Every day it's taken out, right? Or you do it halfway through, maybe halfway through you pay 15 and then the other half you pay 15. Once the day of Eid comes along, you pay the other. Right? But if you pay it in the beginning, it's acceptable. If you pay it halfway through, it's acceptable. And if you pay it after, it's acceptable. As long as it gets what? Paid. In order for it to be distributed. Okay? So do we understand? But if you got better and you didn't pay, the doctor said it's chronic, but all of a sudden, alhamdulillah, ash-shifa min Allah azza wa jal, you're better, you feel you can do it, can you pay fidya? Huh? No, because you were no longer considered somebody who was suffering from what? A chronic illness. So you would have to actually physically fast those days that you what? Missed. Okay. Traveler. فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ. Okay. So what is the criteria of a traveler? Who can quickly give this to me? What qualifies you as being a traveler? Go ahead. Very good. So if they're 80 kilometers outside from your house? No, from the city limits. Let's understand that. You're considered a traveler if you are 80 kilometers outside of the city limits. Is there another measuring stick? See, these are my students, mashallah. Mashallah alaikum. So proud of you guys. I really am, mashallah. You're going to be up here next year. You guys teaching this, inshallah. What's the other criteria, Amin? According to the urf. Urf. What is urf? The customs of society. Say you're going somewhere that's not necessarily 80 kilometers out of the city, but it's far enough to what? To be considered what? Traveling. Somebody calls you, you say, oh, I'm in a different city. Say, where are you, bro? Say, I'm in Chestermere, bro, I'm traveling, yahi. You're in a different city, bro. You ain't traveling, bro. I'm in Airdrie, mashallah, the drive here was amazing. Yahi, you're not traveling. Even though you're out of the city, that wouldn't be considered, outside of the city or considered traveling. But maybe you're somewhere like, somebody give me an example. Lethbridge, how far is Lethbridge? No, Lethbridge is like 2.5 hours, right? No. No, Banff is even further than 80 kilometers. Cochrane, very good. Maybe Cochrane. Canmore's further than 80 kilometers. I checked. Yeah. So let's just say like Cochrane, even though I don't know who would go and have vacation in Cochrane. It's like Cochrane, right? Right? But let's just say outside of Cochrane, further down in like a cabin. You're hunting for the weekend, right, guys? MashaAllah. During Ramadan too, huh? You're killing your iftar, literally. Yeah, you can break your fast. You can break your fast. Do you break your fast once you leave your house? But you're traveling. Or maybe you're traveling on plane to Toronto. Can you break your fast when you leave your house or when you're in the airport? Can you break your fast? No. When can you break your fast when you are traveling, Sarah? So now I'm on the plane and then, the nice flight attendant comes, sir, would you like some juice? I say, yes, please, I can drink. When I get to I have to wait. I can't even drink on the plane. Go. Okay, well, how do you know? There's something that I've always given my students. Go ahead. When the seatbelt light comes on, mashallah. When the seatbelt light comes on, which is about 15 to 20 minutes, what? After the flight is taken, you can what? Assume that what? You are outside of the city limits. And if you don't know and you really want to figure it out, you don't have a, aisle seat, you're sitting by the window, look up. If you see there's no homes, you're in Springbank, you see Callaway Park, guess what you do? Yeah, where's that orange juice, please? Yeah? Then you can drink. Because now you are outside of the city limits. You're in Rocky View now. Do we understand? Okay? Okay, but let's say I'm traveling to Edmonton for a week. I don't know if I want to go to Edmonton for a week, man. I went to Edmonton for 3 days. I was like, get me out of here. Yeah, I'm sorry, man, but Edmonton, man, those brothers over there, Allah yahdihum, man. I'm just joking, wallah, I'm just joking. Great community, mashallah. But say you're in Edmonton, you're going for a week. How do you navigate that as a traveler? I go, once I leave Calgary, I break my fast, I get to Edmonton, the next day I what? Fast. Why do I fast? I'm a traveler. What do you mean I'm traveling, man? I'm in Edmonton. Somebody asked me, where are you from? I said, I'm from Calgary. Huh? I'm at my destination? Mm-hmm. Go. Okay, what if I was staying for 3 days? There's a limit? Oh, more than 4 days. There's a limit. You don't know what the limit is, but there's a limit. You're absolutely right. There's a limit. So there's a limit. Let's understand this, because this is where a lot of people make mistakes. There's a limit. If you are traveling to Edmonton, and you are traveling for more than 4 days, right now we're considering the Hanbali madhab. The Shafi'i madhab, they're a little bit more lenient. They'll say 4 days with addition to the day that you travel and the day that you return. And the Hanafis, mashallah alaikum. You guys are good. Sometimes I wish 15 days, mashallah. 15 days. And all of it is acceptable, depending on if you're sincere and honest, and this is my madhab, this is what I follow. Right? But 4 days, you travel. If I know I'm going less than 4 days, I can go to Edmonton, I can break my fast on my way there, and I can break my fast for the next 2 days, and I can come back not fasting as well. And that whole time would be considered time of travel. But if it is above 4 days, and I know it's above 4 days, then the moment I reach my destination, I am no longer under the ruling of traveler, but I'm considered a resident. Is that understood? So if I know that I'm staying there more than 4 days, then the moment I get there, I have to what? Right. And some of the scholars will say, if you go somewhere and you have no idea when you are returning, then you can continue to break your fast. But we stick to these numbers. These numbers are solid numbers. 4 days. If you're following the Hanafi madhab, then 15 days is acceptable to them. Okay? Are there any questions regarding this specific topic? This specific issue here of travel? You just want to make sure it's clear. 4 days, 15 days, 4 days, 1 day travel, 1 day return. All of it is what? Generally acceptable within Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Go ahead. Okay. Yeah, you brought up the good question. Okay, so say you're traveling and someone's like, I'm going to fast, and someone's like, I'm not going to fast. It's like, why are you not going to fast? You're flying first class to Toronto. Let's understand something here. The concession of breaking our fast is not given because of the difficulty of the travel. The concession that we are given in order to break our fast is because of the travel in of itself, regardless of its difficulty. So somebody will say, well, you're only driving to Edmonton for 3.5 hours, 4 hours. Why don't you just fast? Or you shouldn't break your fast. Now then they'll give you the hadith. Well, they say there was a time at the Prophet ﷺ where there was a man, they were on an expedition, and there was a man who had passed out, and there were people who were fanning the man, and the Prophet ﷺ, what's this chaos going on? And he comes to this person, and he says to the person, what's wrong with you? And they say, Ya Rasulullah, he's fasting. And then the Prophet ﷺ said to this man, لَيْسَ مِنَ الْبِرِّ الصِّيَامُ فِي السَّفَرِ. That's what he said. It is not from righteousness to what? Fast while you are traveling. So you know what's crazy is that those who say you should fast and those who say you don't fast, they both use the same hadith in order to justify their position. As for those who say you shouldn't fast, it's the literal word of what? The Prophet ﷺ. It is not from righteousness to fast when you are traveling. Therefore, to answer your question, that group of people would say, what? Don't fast. However, they will say, no, you need to understand context. If fasting is going to cause you to be like that guy, then you don't fast. Do we understand? Then we don't fast. But if fasting is going to be easy on you, then there's no problem with you what? Fasting. So the scholars, they do differ. Some will say you should break your fast. Some will say you can continue. What we present to the people is what Allah presented to us regarding the fast. يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. That should be the principle in which you use in order to determine whether or not you should fast. If you're going to be the guy on the ground where people are fanning, it's probably best that you what? Don't fast. But if it's going to be easy for you and you're going to be able to fast and you really don't want to make it up after Ramadan and you really don't want to lose the ajr of fasting during the month of Ramadan, then you can what? Fast. Continue fasting. Okay? You got a second one? Listen guys, I have so much. Are you guys okay? Like this might go over an hour. Are you guys okay with it? Inshallah. You have to invest in your akhirah. You have to invest in your dunya. And investing in your dunya for your akhirah is learning. So we'll have to cover it. But quickly, go ahead. His hand was up first and then I'll take you again. Quickly.
You're staying there for more than 4 days. Are you allowed to not fast for like the first?
No. No. So his question was, let's say you're staying there more than 4 days. Are you allowed to fast? Are you allowed not to fast for the 4 days? And then once the 5th day comes in, then you start fasting? No. The moment you arrive knowing that you're going to be there more than 4 days, you are considered what? Muqim. You're considered a resident. Okay? Let's move on. inshallah ta'ala. طيب. Old age, somebody reaches old age, by fasting, it will cause harm or deteriorate the health or the well-being of that individual, then fast is no longer required and mandatory on that person. So somebody who reaches old age, what is old age? Old age, you know what? There's not even a number. Because I know some brothers who are considered seniors and they're more fit and stronger and healthier than some 18-year-olds that I see walking around. Right? But generally that person is going to be understanding like, no, my age is restricting me. My doctor is telling me. I'm getting medical advice. I spoke to the imam, putting all of that together. It's in my best interest for me, my mental health, my physical health, my emotional health, that I do not fast this year. What is the ruling for this individual? What is the ruling? How does he compensate? Abdurrahman? Fidya. So old age will fall under the same category as chronically what? Ill. Right? So there's fidya. Fidya has to be made for every single day. Okay? People who are exempted, children. Often question, does my child need to fast? What qualifies a child, or we'll say in this case an adolescent, what qualifies them to be mukallaf, accountable in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Go ahead. So puberty, we all know what puberty is, right? Puberty, go ahead. 15 lunar years. Right? The books of fiqh will say, look how these are young kids, subhanallah, teaching us. I could ask every question, and I know that there will be young kids. I'm talking about kids from grade 4 up who will be able to answer these questions. Okay? Lunar years. What age would that be in the Gregorian calendar? 14 and a half. MashaAllah. See, they're giving it to you. 14 and a half. 14 and a half. Even if you have not gone through what? Puberty. If you're 14 and a half, shoe 14 and a half. 14 and a half is grade 9, صح? You're in high school or just going into high school, things have changed this year for you. It is now mandatory. And mothers, I know you love your children, but haram. Haram. How can I wake him up? He's sleeping. Wake the kid up. Right? Wake him up. Let the kid get up. Let him learn some discipline. You're doing a disservice to your son or your daughter when you don't wake them up, when you know that they've reached the age of accountability. Wake them up. Make it a Wallahi, some of the most bonding times that you can have with your children is what? Is suhoor. Not iftar. Iftar, people just like, oh, I gotta go, I gotta tarawih, I gotta go here. But, suhoor is, تسحروا فإن في السحور بركة. Barakah, not just in the food, but in the what? The majlis. Right? طيب. Very good. Menstruation as well. Right? That's all dealing with puberty. Okay? Now, if you're not, somebody's like, yes, I'm only 14. It's like, right? So let's just say you're 10 years old, or you're 7 years old, or you're 8 years old. You should still fast. According to your parent, you should what? Encourage your child. So what I do with my 8-year-old, my 7-year-old, I'll say, okay, listen, you're fasting today. And you're going to fast until lunch. Okay? You're going to fast until lunch. And then you're going to eat for the rest of the day. You're going to have breakfast, you're going to have suhoor with us, but you're going to fast until lunch. Grade 2, she could do that. خليها تشد حالها شوي. Right? Good. Right? My 4-year-old, I'll say 10 minutes before the adhan of Maghrib inti saima. Still can't do it. Still can't. But the whole point here is to what? Is to raise them. Let them practice. Let them get the hang of it. Right? There's no problem with a kid fasting half a day. There's no problem with a kid fasting half an hour. Instill the desire to want to fulfill the command of Allah in your child, even at a young age. The Prophet ﷺ did that with salah, didn't he? Right? At 7, you treat them a specific way. At 9, 10, you treat them a specific way. That's what you call tarbiyah. That's tarbiyah. That is how you nurture your children. Okay? What is the ruling for a child who doesn't fast? Are they rewarded? They're rewarded. But do they need to make it up? No, because they're not accountable. Good. Let's move on to the menstruating woman. And I really would like for the sisters to pay close attention here, because a large sum of the questions that we get during the month of Ramadan, specifically from the sisters, revolve around menstruation. My goal here today is to provide you at least some principle to stand upon when it comes to your fasting and dealing with your menstruation. طيب. So, a menstruating woman, a woman would generally know her cycle. A woman would generally know her cycle. She would understand, or she'll even have an application that will give her what? Or track her cycle. And the normal cycle will usually go from about 6 to 7 days. Okay? Anything, generally speaking, above 15 days would no longer be considered what? Menstruation. It would be considered istihada. But we will get to that. One of the biggest issues that the sisters face is, should I not? Do I or do I not? I don't know. I want to present to you this principle today, and inshallah ta'ala it will help in the decision that you make. And that principle is, al-yaqeen la yazul bil-shak. Al-yaqeen la yazul bil-shak. Certainty cannot be negated by doubt. And brothers, if you think I'm just talking to the sisters, if you're a brother or you're a husband, you need to know this as well. Because the first person she's going to ask is who? Especially if you're the husband. Who's she going to ask? You. Al-yaqeen la yazul bil-shak. Certainty cannot be negated by doubt. So what does that mean? Let's say you're not sure if your menstruation has come. There's a doubt. What are you certain of? Go ahead, Sarah. No, you're not even certain with that. What are you certain of? You're certain that you are in a state of ritual purity. That's what's certain. Last week I was, yesterday I was, but where's the doubt? The doubt is, did my menstruation begin? If you are doubting your menstruation beginning, then you should rely on what you are certain of, which is the state of ritual purity, until you become what? Certain. And a woman will know when she is what? Certain. Ainul yaqeen. She will see it. Okay? So the principle here is, if you are in a state where you are not sure, then always default to what? The state of certainty. So let's use this again and see if you've understood. Now you've been on your menstruation from 6 to 7 days. And this is the other issue. Do I fast now or do I withhold? We'll use the principle here. Al-yaqeen la yazul bish-shak. Certainty cannot be negated by doubt. What are you certain of? That you're on your menstruation. What are you doubtful of? That it ended. That it ended. And Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, do not rush the menstruation. Do not rush the menstruation. A woman will know that her menstruation is over by two main things. The discharge becomes clear or the area becomes dry. But if the area is still producing colored discharge, then guess what? You're still on your menstruation. Even if there's some tint or tinge to it, then default to what? Menstruation. Is that understood? Certainty cannot be negated by doubt. Always go back to your state of certainty, whether it is not fasting or it is fasting. Now, let's say a woman is fasting and Maghrib comes, no, Asr comes, and then her menstruation comes. What does she do? She breaks her fast? No, she broke her fast. Do we understand? The menstruation takes it out. It's like, I'm not drinking, I don't care. There's only 1 hour left, I ain't doing this. No. You will be rewarded for the day that you fasted, but it does not go into your account. Because it didn't complete the entirety of the fast. So you're rewarded for the hours that you fasted. Allah's just, but you still need to make up the day. And you not fasting is your obedience to Allah. Just as your obedience to Allah was to fast before the menstruation, your obedience to Allah is to not fast while you are on your menstruation. It is actually haram to fast while you are on your menstruation. It is haram, meaning you incur a sin. So, whether you say, oh no, whatever the situation is, you broke, if you're certain, remember guys, we go back to certainty. If you are certain your menstruation occurred before the adhan of Maghrib, you are rewarded for the day. The day needs to be what? It needs to be made up. Okay? Do we want to talk about pregnant and breastfeeding women? This is a very long one. Okay, pregnant woman. Let's just give the general rulings here. If you are pregnant or you are breastfeeding, if you are pregnant or you are breastfeeding, if your wife is pregnant or she is breastfeeding, then she has given the concession to break her fast if she would like. And she falls under the category of man kana minkum maridan. What type of marad? Short term. Okay? So if she chooses to, she has every right to. Now some of the scholars, they differ. Some of the scholars, they differ. Some of the scholars will say that if she feared for herself, she broke her fast because she feared for her own well-being, then the only thing she needs to do is what? Make up the day. But if she chose specifically to refrain from fasting out of fear for the fetus, then she must make up that day and she should pay what? Fidya as well. Okay? Some of our companions of the Prophet ﷺ, Abdullah ibn Abbas, Abdullah ibn Umar. By the way, the one who pays is the father. The one who pays the fidya is not the woman. It is the father of that child. Ibn Abbas radiallahu an, Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anh, these are huge companions. They have actually a position that if a woman is pregnant and then breastfeeding, how many years is that? 10? No? How many years is that? She's pregnant and then she's breastfeeding. How many years is that? 3 years. Like 9 months and then 2 years. So it would most likely cover 3 Ramadan, right? And then you have another baby within those 3 years. As many people, they like to do this, right? You want to keep the kids what? You don't want a 21-year-old and a 6-year-old, right? That's a problem. So people, they like to put like 1-2 years between their kids, right? So the woman, as she's breastfeeding, what happens? She becomes pregnant again. And then the husband's like, one more, I promise, one more. Or usually it's the wife's like, one more. And the husband's like, okay, inshallah. And then you have another child. So now you have 3 children within the time span of what? Maybe 6, 7 years. In that whole time you were what? You were not fasting. Because you were breastfeeding or you were what? Pregnant. So 7 years we'll say. How many days of Ramadan did you miss? Like 210, right? 210, yeah, he's like this, he's like, right? Brother's got you got a good sense of humor, brother, mashallah. Yeah, right? This many days. It's like 210 days. That's more than that's 2/3 of a year. So the position of Abdullah radiyallahu an, Ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma is that they can pay fidyah for those days. And there is no requirement for them to make what? Up the days. Because of the mashaqqa. Because of the what? The difficulty. But I've given you all the opinions. This was my duty. Now how you choose them according to your decision with you, your family. Maybe you come and see the Sheikh and you explain to them. But I've provided you the positions of our imams. If you're fearful for yourself, you what? You make it up. If you're fearful for the child, you what? You make it up and you pay. If you have a long-term pregnancy as well as breastfeeding, the position of Ibn Abbas, the position of Abdullah ibn Umar is a legitimate position. It is a respectful position. It is certainly outside of the 4 scholars, but it is still regarded as a credible position within Ahlul Sunnah that the woman can what? That the woman can pay. Now how you make your decision is between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, taking istishara from the people you love and trust, inshallah ta'ala. But the knowledge has been what? Presented, inshallah. Okay, now we're almost done, mashallah. This gathering fiha barakah, inshallah. Okay, so let's move on now to the nullifiers of fasting. What are the nullifiers? What is a nullifier? Go ahead. Something that makes it invalid. So you have the nullifiers of wudu, for example, right? You have the nullifiers of prayer. And here we have the nullifiers of what? You even have the nullifiers of Islam. Nawaqid al-Islam. So there's nullifiers. What are the nullifiers of fast? Who here can give me, remember I told you to memorize the definition? Sisters, the brothers memorized it. I know they're good. Other than you, Sarah. Yalla. Who memorized? Yeah, don't smile at me. I know you memorized. I know, sisters, I gave you the definition. Who can give me the definition, please? The brothers, mashallah. Okay, go ahead. The worship of Allah with the intention of fasting, refraining from food, drink. No, you missed one big one. Major intimacy. Yep. Very good. Okay. This is why we needed to memorize the definition. What are the 3 things mentioned in the definition? food, drink, and major intimacy. Have you ever asked yourself this question? Does putting lotion break my fast? Does cutting my nails break my fast? Does swearing break my fast? Yeah, yes? Okay, we'll have to. Does listening to music when I'm coming home from school break my fast? Look at the smiles on people's faces, eh? Everyone. Does lying break my fast? Everybody's saying yes, but let me just tell you something, no. Do they take away from the reward of the fast? Yes, but are they nullifiers of fast? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Okay, so this is the principle. Anything that resembles food, drink, or major intimacy in way or effect will nullify your fast. Let me repeat that. Anything that nullifies, anything that resembles eating, drinking, or major intimacy in way or effect will nullify your fast. Okay, now let's give some examples. Let's say I'm going on a trip and I'm traveling. And I go to one of these pharmacies and I get an IV vitamin C drip. Does anybody know what a drip is? A drip is like an IV, but they infuse it with vitamins in order for it to essentially benefit you in a quicker way, more effectively. Right? So you sit down, they put the IV in, and it drips for an hour, and then all of those vitamins enter into your body. Would that nullify my fast? Okay, who says yes? You guys all say yes? Okay, who says no, it won't nullify my fast? Okay, it does nullify your fast. But why? In what way? Way or effect? What's the effect? Nourishment, right? Nourishment. Okay. Let's say I'm biting my nails, and I know I'm biting my nails, and that's like, people should not do that, right? But say you're biting your nails, and say for some reason you actively, consciously swallowed the nail. I don't know. Like, who does that? I don't know, man. Sometimes you see kids, they pick their nose and they eat it, right? Right? Let's say a kid picked his nose, like a 10-year-old. No, a 15-year-old, some guy in high school. Doesn't have too many friends. But let's just say he picked his nose and he ate it. Just for the sake of it. Knowing he did it, did he nullify his fast? Was there a lot of nutrition in that booger? I like making you guys laugh, huh? How did it nullify his fast? By what? By way. By way. But what is by way? It entered into his stomach. It entered into his stomach. What if I'm making wudu? And I make wudu and I'm making my madmad and I'm, putting the water in my nose as well, and I got a little bit of water, and then I'm like, I quenched my what? The back of my throat. Did I break my wudu? Yeah, purpose. Did I break my wudu? But it went through my nose, bro, not through my mouth. It's okay? Why did it break my wudu? The water went through my nose, akhi. It didn't go through my mouth. Why would it break my wudu? Huh? Because my nose is connected to my throat, and what? And then it goes down into my stomach. So by what? By way or by? By way. Nobody eats like a burger through their nose, ya akhti. Huh? By effect. What was the effect? You quenched your thirst. Even if it's not done the traditional way, you quenched it through your nasal passage. Isn't that right? So you've nullified it. You did it purposely. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, generally when you're cleaning yourself for wudu, especially when it comes to your mouth and your nose, do it very what? Carefully when you are what? Fasting. For that very reason. For that very reason. Okay. So intentionally drinking or eating, does that break your fast? Okay, let's say it's unintentional. What happens then? Sorry? You keep continuing. فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ أَطْعَمَكَ وَسَقَاكَ. That Allah, what? He gave you as a what? Almost as a gift. You know, kids, you see them a lot in the school. Sometimes they're running in the gym and it's Ramadan. And they run to where? The water fountain. And then they go, and then halfway through they're like, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, I'm fasting. Does he continue to fast? Yes. If it was what? رَبَّنَا لَا تُؤَاخِذْنَا إِن نَسِينَا أَوْ أَخْطَأْنَا. Right? أخطأنا. طيب. There is an exemption. Some of the scholars will say that a person who is preparing food, can take a small portion of that food and place it on their tongue in order to make sure that the food is what? Edible. Right? Because is that food going to nourish them? No, it's not going to nourish them. It's a small taste for a greater purpose. Okay? But the husband cannot come in and say, honey, please come here. And no. It's the one who is what? Cooking. Right? The one who is cooking. Okay. Breaking your fast can also be done by your intention. And that's something people need to be very careful of. A nullifier of fasting is your intention. I'm not fasting. That's it. I'm done. I'm not fasting. That's it. I'm done. You have now nullified your what? Fast. But if you're struggling, like you're debating as to whether or not you're going to break your fast, then you should consider yourself what? Fasting. Until you have established your intention that you are what? So you don't necessarily need to eat or anything or drink anything in order to nullify your fast. It is even the intention of your heart that can nullify your fast. Okay? Intercourse, major intimacy, breaks fast. There once was a man at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he said to the Prophet alaihi salatu wasallam, I am doomed. He says, you're doomed? He says, what's wrong? He said, Ya Rasulullah, unfortunately I had major intimacy with my wife while we were fasting during the month of Ramadan. So the Prophet ﷺ, guys, look at this. The Prophet ﷺ didn't say, Astaghfirullah al-Azim. Who are you? Fear Allah. The Prophet ﷺ said, okay, there's a problem, we need to solve it. What did you do? He said, can you free a slave? He says, Ya Rasulullah, I cannot free a slave. The Prophet ﷺ said, okay. He said, can you fast 2 months consecutively? Shahraini mutatabi'ain. He said, Ya Rasulullah, I can't even fast like 30 days, man. I'm struggling here. He says, okay. He says, can you feed 60 people? He says, Ya Rasulullah, I don't really have that much money. So the Prophet ﷺ said, get me a platter of dates. So he got the platter of dates and he gave it to the man and he said, go distribute this platter of dates to the masakin of Medina. He said, Ya Rasulullah, there's nobody in Medina who's more poorer than me. The Prophet ﷺ was like, okay, yo bro, just take this and just get out of here. Just go. Just go. Right? So from that, number one, we learn what? The adab, the etiquette of the Prophet ﷺ. How he was with his people. He was a person who was kind, just. Kan Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam dahaq. He used to smile. He would even joke around alayhi salatu wassalam. But he was very merciful with his people. And number two, we learn what? The kafara. For somebody who is indulging in marital relations while they are fasting during the day. Not during the evening, right? Because what does Allah say in the Quran? فَالْآنَ Bashiruhunna. Right? Now you can have these types of relationships after Maghrib. But between Fajr and Maghrib, then no. So what is the expiation? Number one, freeing a slave. Generally speaking, we don't have the capacity to what? Free a slave. Now, so we move on to the next. What is what? Fasting? 2 months. But when we say 2 months, it's not like 60 days. It's shahraini mutatabi'ain. One after the other. And if for some reason we are unable to do that, then the third means of expiation for that sin is what? Is feeding 60. That doesn't mean like, okay, we did what we do, may Allah forgive us. Now let's have a great dinner for all our friends and bring them over, inshallah. That's not an excuse. Because it's not your friends. Who is it? It's the needy. It's the poor. Let's make that very, very clear. Okay? I do have to mention this, guys. I know it's a little bit, and I know there's young people here, and every year I get an email or a phone call. Brother, I don't know if you should have mentioned this, but yes, la haya fid din. Deliberate seminal emission. For those who understand, they understand. Do we understand? Deliberate seminal emission. Deliberate. And I say deliberate here because it has to be deliberately. Because sometimes it's involuntary. Like a wet dream. Right? But deliberate seminal emission will nullify your fast. What is the expiation? Istighfar, tawbah, and to make up that day again. Is that understood? Istighfar, tawbah, and to make that day up after Ramadan. Now, let's say somebody is sleeping and they have a wet dream. In the middle of the day, they take a qaylula. Everybody gets tired, they take a nice nap. Maybe they wake up and they had a wet dream. Is their fast still valid? No? Yes? No? Yes. The fast is still valid. Because it was what? It was unintentional. It was unintentional. It was out of your way. Your job now is to go and what? Should make ghusl. And continue with your fast. Is there need for istighfar? There's always need for istighfar. But is there need for istighfar for this specific thing? Not necessarily. Because it was not something you did purposely. Here's an issue that I do want to mention though. Let's say that a husband and a wife, they have marital relations at night. And because it's so late, they do not make ghusl. So they go to sleep in a state of janaba. The Prophet ﷺ said, by the way, that if you go to sleep without making ghusl while in a state of janaba, then the least you should do is make what? Wudu. It doesn't qualify you to pray, but at least it lessens the level of ritual impurity. So you make wudu and you go to sleep. Then what happens is that you miss the adhan of Fajr. Meaning you wake up after Fajr. It's still Fajr time, but you wake up after the adhan. Meaning you missed what? Suhoor. You're in a state of janaba. Are you allowed to fast that day? So still people are saying no, some people are saying yes. Are you allowed to fast on that day? Yes, you are allowed to fast because tahara is not a shart, is not a condition of your fasting. So you would wake up, you would go make ghusl, you would pray your fajr, and you would continue to what? Without having to make it up. Because tahara from janaba, or even the same thing can go for a sister and her menstruation. Sometime a sister will go to sleep and she'll say, I'll know in the morning. Right? I'll know in the morning if I'm done. And she wakes up in the morning and she's done. But she didn't make what? Ghusl. Can she fast? If she knew she was done before the adhan of Fajr? Yes, she can fast. Because tahara is not a condition of what? It's a condition of your salah. Not a condition of your fast. Yes. What if you didn't make wudu? Yeah, you didn't make wudu. You should have. Yeah, it's so. Right? Intentionally vomiting. Intentionally vomiting will break your fast. Intentionally vomiting, meaning you vomit, you force yourself to vomit. Now, if you vomit involuntarily, does that break your fast? No. But you're probably in a state where you probably should what? Break your fast. Right? Because you're obviously sick. Right? But say maybe there's 20 minutes before. I know a lot of people, they suffer from acid reflux, especially during Ramadan. And sometimes they vomit a lot during Ramadan. But if you're not doing it intentionally, you are able to continue your fast. But if you do it voluntarily, then you have nullified that fast. And what is the expiation for that? You just need to what? You need to make it up, inshallah ta'ala. You know what, guys? I've taken so much of your time this evening. What have we covered today? This is what we covered. We covered the definition of fasting, both linguistically and technically. We covered the definition of fasting. We covered the pillars of fasting, starting with the intention, and then we moved on to the time. Then we moved on to those who are exempted from fasting. And then we went to discussing the nullifiers of fasting. Okay? So this is what we covered. These are the 7 things that we covered today. I just want to ask you one question. You know what? I will leave 10 minutes for Q&A. If anybody has a question, I will certainly cater to you, inshallah ta'ala. But for those who do not have, are there any questions? Oh, okay, go ahead. لازم لا هذا غير صحيح. Yeah, so she's saying that if you're making a qada of your fast, then the same rulings of that fast in your qada are the same rulings of your fast during what? During Ramadan. Like sometimes people will be like halfway during the day when they're making their qada, they'll say, today's just not working out for me, I'm going to break my fast. That's the same thing of you in the middle of Ramadan saying, it's just not working out for me today, I'm just going to break my fast. And similarly, you can't make the intention afterwards. Your sunnah you can. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ when he woke up and he asked Aisha, he said, Aisha radiallahu anha, he said, do we have any food? She said, no, Ya Rasulullah, we have no food. This is the Prophet ﷺ. We have no food. He said, okay, well then I'm fasting today. Right? So say you didn't have breakfast and it's 11 o'clock and you're like, you know what? I'm feeling strong today. I'm going to make up my day for fasting today. I'm going to make this my day. Can you do that? No, because it's a fard. But could you do that with a sunnah? Yes, you could do that with a sunnah. Do we understand that? So let's just say on a random Monday, I wake up late, 10 a.m. I wake up and I'm like, you know what? I feel like I want to fast. Can I fast? I can fast. But the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, مَنْ لَمْ يُبَيَّتِ الصِّيَامِ قَبْلَ الْفَجْرِ فَلَا صِيَامَ لَهُ, that specifically is regarding what? Fasting Ramadan. So, Jazakallahu khairan for pointing that out, sister. Go ahead. Yeah, you could do that, inshallah. Yeah, go ahead. For what reason? No. For what reason, no? Why did you miss it? Yeah, for those situations, you do. But for any other situation, what? You make it up. And there's no need for fidya. Okay? And the reason you say they have to pay fidya is because they don't have the capacity to what? To make it up. So you resort to the next, which is to pay, which is to feed. Not to pay. We say pay a lot. It shouldn't be pay, it should be feed, to feed. Okay? Any other questions? Go ahead, brother.
So regarding the feeding of 16 masakin, what if you live in a place where there are no?
Then you can certainly send it to these organizations. Like for example, we at the IISC, we have what we call the Helping Hands program. And the Helping Hands program, what it does is it provides food hampers on a monthly basis for those people who are less fortunate within the city, right? Because there are a lot of, when we think of miskin, we think like no water, no housing, no. But a miskin is somebody who doesn't have enough for the next day or have enough to sustain for them for the full year, right? And there's a lot of brothers and sisters who are suffering from the lack of financial support. So what we do is we have, number one, we have the food hampers, and furthermore, we have iftar for them that we deliver to their homes. And we're well aware of these families. These families have been studied. Even they provide their finances to us in order for us to be comfortable in giving them these types of essential kafara, right? However, if you're not comfortable in doing that, you can go to different websites like Islamic Relief, IDRF, Penny Appeal, all these larger organizations. They offer fidya. So you would pay for they will give you the month of Ramadan, they'll say $300. And usually it's cheaper than it is here because the standard here is much what? Higher. Yeah. So there's no problem in that. It doesn't have to be. But it is preferred to be. Because Islamically, you want to start from the core and you slowly want to move out. That is how we strengthen our community. But in a state where you want to send it out, there's no harm in that. Especially you may have like distant relatives. Like I would personally say if you have a distant relative, they're awla. They're more deserving of it. Right? Because that's your family. Go ahead.
So let's say like my last question, right? About the fidya.
Mm-hmm.
You have to pay every day when for old age or chronic illnesses.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say like someone missed like a whole month of Ramadan and they can't pay fidya because it's too expensive. What are you going to do with that?
لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. The Prophet, like the Prophet ﷺ said, معذور. You want to break your fast? Follow iqama.ca. Right? This is the best advice I can give you guys. You want to break your fast? Follow iqama.ca. You want to start your fast? Follow iqama.ca. You follow the time of your community, inshallah. And this is the time of our community. This is the time of our congregation. Or if you're with a specific masjid and that's your masjid, then follow whatever they present to you. But here, if you are a member of the IISC or you're somebody who, not a member, you're all members, mashallah, ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum. But if you are somebody who's always here, then this is where you want to find your time for starting and your time for ending, inshallah ta'ala. No, iqama.ca, if it's right behind you, brother, if you take a look at it, it provides you right there, iqama. Right? So those are the time. The adhan time, that's the time.
Right, that's start of your fast.
Yeah, the start of your fast. Iqama.ca, that's the website to find that time. Sometimes you'll go to like Islamic Finder and you'll have like 6 different times for Fajr. And you're like, oh my God, what am I doing here? Right? So don't confuse yourself. It's important that we stay tight as a community. Like sometimes we've seen this before, sometimes in the last 10 nights, we have suhoor for the brothers and sisters who are here for tahajjud prayer, and then we have suhoor for them, and then some brothers will end, like 30 minutes before another brother, and they're just standing there looking at everybody else. They're like, Fatir. Fatir. Right? No, it's like, let's stay as a community and follow the same time, inshallah ta'ala. So follow the time of your masjid, of your local masjid. That's my advice to you, inshallah. Go ahead.
Speaking of following times, let's say I'm traveling,
Yeah.
while fasting, and I go into different time zones.
Yeah, you follow the time of where you are at. So say you're traveling and say you're into a different time zone. If that time zone gives you an extra hour, and that's from Allah, bro. You move to the East Coast, they give you an extra 2 hours, you're good to go. But you're going to the West Coast, you lose an hour, and that's life. You don't say, well, I'm from Calgary, right? You follow the time, and even if you're on a plane, and once you lift up your window and you see the sun has set, you break your fast. You don't wait till you get to your destination and see what time it is. At the moment, you break your fast. Okay? Any other questions? Oh, sisters, go ahead in the back.
If you have a nosebleed or like a really large cut where you're losing blood, does that break your fast?
No, that doesn't break your fast. Either does like blood, taking blood samples. Some of the only time the scholars they talk about the removal of blood is hijama. So there are some scholars who will say that the hijama will break up or nullify a person's fast because it gives them a means of nourishment and power. So that's something that they need to be careful with, but I don't think that many people are going to be doing that. But general like blood, blood exams and things of that nature, a bloody nose, a laceration that's bleeding actively does not necessarily nullify your fast. Because remember the principle, anything that resembles eating, drinking, or major intimacy by way or effect will nullify it. And losing blood from your body in those ways does not fall under that principle. Okay, go ahead. Traveling, yeah? Yeah. You have to. And you break it. Once you are out of the city limits. I'm fast. Today you wake up, you have your cup of coffee. I know what you want. That we all want the cup of coffee before we fast. But you break your fast once you are qualified as a traveler, not once you are intending to travel. Okay, go ahead. Oh, that's a good question. Without niyyah before Fajr, you were before Fajr. Like you have to give. You didn't make the niyyah? Like you mean midway through the day you decided to fast? Your fard? You need to make it up. Go ahead.
Let's say if you're biting your lips, your dry lips, and maybe you're swallowing saliva, will that break your fast?
Swallowing saliva unintentionally will not nullify your fast. But if that's a habit, you should be more conscious of it and stay away from it. And if it did happen unintentionally, then Allah is looking past that. Because nobody's here like a vampire trying to suck their own blood, right? Right? So, inshallah, it should be fine, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Go ahead, brother.
Yes, sir. We start our Ramadan in, let's say, India.
Yeah.
And we travel and come to Canada. We lose 1 day.
Yeah, you lose 1 day.
That we need to make up or?
No, you don't need to make up. Yeah. You just fast according to the time you are in.
I fast whole, let's say, 28 days, 21 days. But I'm not missing anything.
No. No. Because you still went through that time, right? You still did, but maybe you went through that time where it wasn't a time to be fasting, right? But you're traveling anyways, brother. You need to make it up because you're traveling. So you're most likely not even fasting if you're traveling. I'm certainly not fasting if I'm traveling to India. You understand what I'm saying? So that day you would make it up. But if you're asking because you lose a day and you have to make it up, that's not necessarily the case.
From here, if we go to India, it might be 31 days also.
It could be, and then you would fast. Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
Like, let's say you have an illness, let's say for example, any chronic illness.
chronic illness.
So here's my question. So how do you determine
Yeah.
if you think it is a chronic illness?
I would advise, I would advise you speak to your doctor, and more preferably if you had a Muslim doctor, that would be better because they understand the repercussions and the implications a little bit better. And furthermore, I would also speak to an imam. So I would take a medical opinion as well as a religious opinion. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, we spoke about that. So the Malikis are okay with that. But they say that if for some reason you stop, you have to redo it again. Oh yeah, so yes, you can make a generic intention for the totality of the month. However, if for some reason you stop during the month, you need to make that intention again for the remaining days. This for Ramadan. But when it comes to making up your fast, yeah, you need to do it the day before. Yeah, you need to do it the day before. You have to. Or no, I shouldn't say the day before. You need to make it before the adhan of Fajr. Yes. Go ahead.
Let's say you're fasting for like the what days, but then you make it as a way to just like your whole family's fasting. But
You can't switch your intention like that. Sorry. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Yeah, you can, no, not that way. You can switch it the other way. The other way you can switch it, not that way though. Yeah.
The other one, some people combine between the 6 days and the next couple of days.
Yeah, that's a mas'ala that some of the ulama they talk about, but generally speaking, you should not include any secondary intention when it comes to your fasting for what? Many of the times people will say like Arafah, like a Siyam Arafah, they'll say, can I put two together? It's like just fast and inshallah Allah will give you, but make your intention solely for qada. But Allah will give you, inshallah, right? The 6 days, yeah, اختلف العلماء في هذا الموضوع. Yeah, you shouldn't because the time is, some scholars they say no, the dain, but the concession is given till when? Next Ramadan. Yeah. Go ahead. Brothers, yes, I will get to you right after this one.
So when about the fasting during one day that goes off, so let's say you have like half a sandwich.
Half a sandwich? Oh, you're stretching there, man. Half a sandwich? Like if you could finish it in one bite, bismillah. Right? Like shove it in there. But you know, yeah. Just try and be a little bit more conscious of the time. That's my advice to you. But if there's something small in your hand or something in your mouth, then you are allowed to finish that off, inshallah. Go ahead. That's makruh. It's highly disliked. It should be avoided. Go ahead. Sorry, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
If you're making up for your missed fasting,
Yeah.
especially if you missed it for like genuine reasons, let's say if you're sick or something,
Yeah.
you get the same ajr, same as Ramadan.
That's so funny you say that because when I was in Medina, I remember my teacher asking me, we had this mas'ala, we were talking about this specific issue. He said, is it better to fast during Ramadan if you are traveling, or is it better to break your fast? So also we'll say, is it better to fast during Ramadan when you are sick, or just to push through, you know, or is it just to break? Will you still get the same? He was going around the class. I said it's better to fast during. And this is my opinion, right? I'm just a young kid. I don't know what I'm talking about. But I said, he said, why? What's your position? I said, the ajr. Ayyam and ma'dudat. Allah said these are limited days. Therefore we cannot count. But I know Allah, as we all know Allah. And Allah is not cheap. And Allah is not stingy. And Allah is not limited in His amount that He can give. Therefore, I would never put a restriction on Allah's generosity. Okay? Inshallah. Okay, Imran.
If somebody has missed some of the fast, let's say last more than last 10, 15 years of the time, wants to do now, so it's better to do fidya or just start.
I would do fidya if I could, and I would do my best to make up as many days as possible. Because that is a dain. You are indebted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I would follow that up with istighfar and tawbah as well. Not to the point where it becomes completely hopeless for you. Take your time with it. Enjoy it. Instead of fasting a Monday and a Thursday as a sunnah, then fast a Monday and a Thursday as a fard. Okay? Your hand was up, brother. Go ahead. Yeah, some of the scholars, they say if it has been paid, then it is okay. Okay? But it is always better to what? Make it up. If you have the ability to do so, it would be better to make it up. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. She did. Whether she recognizes it or not, she did when she set her phone for suhoor. You understand what I'm saying? Like, we do things, and like when you put your shoes on today and you came to the masjid, you didn't say, I'm putting my shoes on to protect my feet from the cold. You did it, but there was an intention behind it. You understand? Every action has an intention. The goal of shaitan is to negate that in your mind. But generally speaking, that person had an internal intention. They knew that they were going to be fasting the next day. They prepared their suhoor. They set their alarm. They should be fine, inshallah. Yeah, well, yeah. Go ahead. Hind, I will choose you. You don't have to keep your hand up. Go ahead. Can you repeat that to me again? I'm so sorry, I can't hear you.
So like the number of days that we miss from Ramadan for pregnancy and breastfeeding.
Yes.
And then every like the recurrent Ramadan that come and go.
Yeah.
And then the same number of days, those exact days, they keep like they're just carry on.
Yeah.
So do I need to make fidya? Do I make them up?
Okay. Did you just come right now? Okay. So you're talking about pregnancy and breastfeeding?
I'm just asking about like if more like recurrent Ramadan plus over the same number of days.
Then you have to pay for every day.
And for every day and every Ramadan I have to make fidya or just one?
No, every Ramadan. But that's not by you, that's by your husband.
Okay.
Yeah, he needs to.
And then the second question.
For pregnancy and breastfeeding. Yes.
And then for
Every Ramadan. 3, 6, 9.
till I make them.
If you choose that opinion until you make it up, or until whatever opinion you follow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the second question is like for qada, menstruation days
Yeah.
after Ramadan.
Yeah.
And then the mistake of like breaking my fast the day like because it's not over for whatever reason.
You broke your fast because of the menstruation?
No. So I'm making the day up
Yeah.
because I missed it in Ramadan.
Yeah.
And then I did a mistake like of
And you ate.
yeah, and not by mistake. Like I
Yeah. You need to make istighfar
and then just make this day,
and make that day up.
make the day.
That's it. Just make the day up and you have to make istighfar. Just similarly as when you voluntarily eat or drink during the month of Ramadan. It's a sin. You need to make istighfar and you need to make the day up. Okay. You're welcome. Hind. In principle, you can, because the extension, the time has been given, right? Some will say a day always needs to be given precedent and priority. But the general ruling is that you have time. So we'll follow that ruling, inshallah. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm so sorry, Ukhti, I don't hear. Hind, you want to speak on her behalf, please? Or she can.
You get more reward to make up your days on days that are like Monday, Thursday, and the white days, but you're mixing up your fast on those days.
when it comes to the issue of reward, what's the difference between me saying to you, Allah will give you one reward or Allah will give you two reward? I'm going to tell you something. We don't even know what one reward is. I'm going to promise you this. Allah is going to give you more than you could have even wanted. Right? Let's never restrict the generosity, the kindness, and the karam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Akram al-akrameen. Right? So, inshallah, if you want it, you'll get it from Allah. Right? If fasting, he says, but fasting is for me. And I reward it as I will. Leave it at that.
I think the question is it better to make up the days of Ramadan on Mondays and
It's
preferred days?
she asked for reward. Is it better? Is it better? Well, you're not fasting a sunnah, you're fasting a fard, right? It's better to get them done as soon as possible. That's what I would say is better. If you want to ask me what is better, it is better to get them done sooner than later. That is what is better, inshallah. Yes, go ahead. Brother's okay, yeah, go ahead. Mouthwash should be avoided. It should be avoided. It doesn't necessarily break your fast. It's very similar to toothpaste, but it should be avoided, especially a mouthwash with what? Alcohol. It should be avoided. When you're brushing your teeth, you should use very minimal amount of what? Toothpaste. But siwak and toothbrush does not necessarily break your fast. Okay? Last question, go ahead. That's okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So let's say you're traveling and you want to travel.
Yeah.
You're, let's say, going to Middle East.
Yeah.
You go through the sunset and get sunset.
Yeah.
How would you figure that out?
No matter, you would just have to gauge it with your eye. Gauge it with your eye. When it's pitch dark, you know you're good. You know you're good. And we also know the tint of the sky when it's that dhuhr asr time, right? It's a little bit more orange than it is bright white, right? You'd have to gauge it if you chose to fast. Yeah. No, not with the fard. Okay, guys. Yep.
My friend was asking about if I am paying fidya for the number of days I didn't fast because of pregnancy and breastfeeding. So I pay like if it's, let's say it's 2 weeks, so I pay 15 days fidya. Just one time, every Ramadan.
If you miss it every Ramadan.
No, just once.
No, then just that's it.
Yeah, just the days, the 15 days I pay once.
Yeah, just once.
هم فهموا ان بما انها قعدت مثلا 7 سنين
لا مو مستمرة.
هي كل بما انها ما جاتش على اول رمضان اللي ما عدتش يبقى كل رمضان تعيدها تاني.
لا مشقة.
compound.
Compound interest, huh? No. One time. If it's that month, you did it that month, it's only with that month. But if you did it the next month, then you do it. If you didn't do it the next month, there's no halaqa between that month and this month. Yeah. No. Absolutely not. Okay. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. جزاكم الله خيرا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.